Welcome back, guys. I am Papa. This is Papa Builds, and today's video is about this. This is a knife that I like to use for camping and things like that, and it's great. But what is not great is the sheath. It's okay, it gets the job done, but it's kind of clunky and it's not finished. So I thought I would put my leatherworking skills to the test and make a better one. And instead of being vertical like this, have it be horizontal. And I failed. I had to make this twice because the first time I made a lot of mistakes. So enjoy this quick clip, and you can skip ahead if you want to get right into it. This is the prototype that failed. I made the sheath too small, the knife won't even go in here. The snaps I messed up, I made the straps too big, I messed up the stitching, and many other things. And I just said, and I dusted myself off. Now, watch me make this one. First thing I'm gonna do is draw a little template that I'm gonna cut out. And then I'll be able to use this to trace over on the leather. Go ahead and cut it out. There's a lot of leather cutting knives. I've always just used a razor blade, and that's worked just fine for me. And here what I'm doing is wetting the back of the leather so that I can fold it over the knife and be 100% sure that it'll fit this time. And then I'll take a pencil and just mark where I'm gonna cut it out to make it match. Now I'm getting ready to do my favorite part of leatherworking. I'm gonna wet this leather so that I can use the tooling and put the pattern on it more easily. I'm gonna trace a line right here so that I know where I'm gonna stop my tooling, where I'm gonna make a pattern. And I'm gonna go over that with this tool so that I can see it a little bit more clearly, make it more bold. And I'm gonna draw a center line to have as a guide. And then I'm just gonna take my leather marking tool and tap a pattern. And pretty quickly, you've got a really cool design on your leather. Now I'm beveling the edge, where I'm just taking this tool and rounding the sharp edge where I cut it, and that'll make it easier to burnish later. Right here I'm marking the welt. The welt is an important piece in the sheath because it goes between the stitching, so that way the blade doesn't cut the stitching and ruin the sheath. And I'm making it larger than it needs to be, and I'm going to cut it to size. That's going to be a common thing you'll see on this sheath. I just put on the leatherworking cement that will hold the welt on there to make it easier for the stitching whenever I go to do that. And I'm going to compress this overnight so that cement has time to really set. And then, just like I said, I'm going to cut it to size. I'm wetting the leather to help the dye absorb easier and be more even. I'm trying to go for kind of a mahogany kind of color on here, so we'll see how it works. Now I'm cutting the straps that will hold it onto the belt. And I'm going to do another round of tooling on this to make it match, so that both of these straps will have the same kind of pattern. And then of course I've got to dye this to match the same color as the other sheath. And I'm wearing gloves because this isn't fun to get off your skin. So I did a light brown, now I'm doing a red. And I'm using Feebling's Pro dye, which an important note is there's leather dye and Pro dye. Pro dye you need to let dry for a lot longer if you're going to use that. Like 24 hours, I think. So I'm doing light brown, red, another red, and then I think I'm doing another light brown here to try to get the color that I want. And I'm sealing it with some Resolene. For the longest time I called it Roslyn. I don't know why. I'm putting that on. And while I was putting this on, I remembered that I did not burnish my edges, so that's what I'm doing here. This is called a burnishing tool, and you just rub it back and forth on the edges, and you see it getting shiny. What it's doing is sealing the edge of that leather. So I'm going to go ahead and burnish this up real quick, and then when I'm done with that, I'm going to add another coat of Resolene, and I ended up doing 3 coats all together, and that's what it looks like. Getting there, I like the color. And of course, I'm going to give some love to the inside and do another 3 coats on the inside of the leather as well. So now I'm going to mark another line that I can follow for my stitching. And I'm actually pushing the top of a rivet right here to mark where I'm going to punch that hole later. A little bit of wax from, this is a tea candle that I like to use, helps the punch go in and out a little easier. And I'm just going to punch my way down. Now what I'm doing, because it's hard to punch through so many layers of leather, is I'm marking where the other holes were and then opening it up and punching through just like that. And now I'm punching out my rivet hole. Same thing on the bottom. And then I'm going to punch the holes on the other side, and I'm going to punch the holes in the strap and go ahead and set the snaps in there. And I'm punching some holes here. This was my idea to go through the same stitching holes, and I'm using those needles to hold it in place so that it all lines up. And then I punch the holes in the top, and now I'm stitching it together. I'm using the saddle stitching method, which I'm not going to explain the whole thing. There's lots of videos about saddle stitching if you want to know exactly what I'm doing. But just know I'm doing the saddle stitching, and I'm all over the place. People have like leather holders and they keep it in one spot. It's very satisfying to watch. I don't, and I was going back and forth and all over, so just know that I was stitching in this part. Now I'm doing the same thing, setting the snaps for the other one, and punching the holes and stitching through. With leatherworking, you use waxed cotton thread, and when you're done, tie a knot, and I melt it with my lighter. Here I'm punching the bottom holes for this strap, and I'm going to go ahead and set this rivet so that it'll hold the sheath together while I start stitching. And once again, I'm using that saddle stitching method, and I have a pair of pliers to help pull that needle through so many layers of leather. It really does wear out your fingers. And so that's just how I solve that problem. I've got a pair of pliers and pull it right through and save myself a lot of hassle. I also wanted to take a minute to say this isn't a leatherworking channel. I will do it here and there, but this is just a making channel. I'll be doing, movie props and nerd stuff, many things. I'll be doing whatever, some stuff around the house, whatever it could be. I like to challenge myself. I do leatherworking, metalworking, woodworking, all kinds of things. So if you have something you'd like to see, any cool ideas, then leave a comment below and maybe I'll get on it. Now I'm going through that other strap. And while it's quick in the video, the stitching was one of the most time-consuming parts of the whole thing. And there's probably leatherworking guys that are like, oh, you're doing it. You can make it way easier on yourself. And they're probably right. I'm not a professional. But I did get it done. Get near the end, go ahead, tie myself a little knot, snip the ends off, and touch it up with the lighter to really seal and kind of hold that knot in place. Now, that's looking pretty good, and I'm going to set the rivet on the bottom. So I've got a rivet at the top and bottom and plenty of stitching in between, so that it should hold it pretty good for a long time. And moment of truth, it fits. What I'm doing is pushing these straps onto the snaps that are already there so that I know exactly where to cut my holes to set the other side of the snaps. And now I'm setting the snaps, marking where I'm going to cut the holes. You can kind of see where I can push down and see where I need to cut the holes. And I'm cutting the straps to the right size, which was easier for me than just trying to cut them originally the exact same size. One thing I do a lot is just make it bigger and cut it down to where it needs to be. I'm dyeing the ends and burnishing it, and of course got to put a little Resolene on there to make sure we're all sealed up. And last but not least, I'm cutting the strap to hold the knife in there. Doing a little bit of tooling, a little bit of beveling, and I'm going to dye it to match the same color, light brown, red, red, light brown, and burnish the edges the same way. A little bit of Resolene to seal it up. Cut my holes, set my snaps, cut my holes, set my snaps, cut it to the right size, and I'm going to mark where my holes need to go, punch them out, set all the rivets, and there you have it. I'm Papa, this is Papa Builds. Thanks for being here.